Hello, my sober lovelies. Before we dive in, I'm really excited to announce my group coaching program for women is live, and you can join now. So excited for this because let's be real here. Quitting drinking isn't just about saying no to the glass of wine or booze. It's about what comes after. All the fear, the boredom, the late night anxiety, and the stories you've been telling yourself for years. And that's where my Rewired Sober group coaching program for women comes in. It's only $247. I'm being totally transparent on the price. It's for 3 months, and you'll learn how to shift your mindset, build habits that actually stick, and question the core beliefs that have been keeping you stuck, and find healthier ways to deal with that loneliness and that now what feeling. The best part is you don't have to do it alone. We'll have live group coaching sessions weekly, and there'll be a bunch of women walking through it with you. It's not another cookie cutter sobriety program for mommy vloggers. It's neuroscience meets real life, and it's designed for women to help you not just stay sober, but actually feel good living sober. You can join anytime, and I'd love to see you on the inside. So start today, get instant access. The link's in the show notes. Welcome to Rewired Sober, the podcast where we unpack what it really takes to rewire your brain after alcohol. Hi, I'm your host, Kate Vitella, a registered nurse, board certified in mental health and addiction, sober since 2018, and a coach who blends neuroscience, lived experience, and real talk to help women break the shame spiral and rebuild their thinking with tools like journaling, humor, and honest conversation. This isn't surface level sobriety. This is where the healing gets deep, grounded, and unapologetically honest. So let's get into it. Welcome back to another episode. We are going to dive in with a friend of mine here and talk about a really important aspect of recovery, which is community. So today on the podcast, I bring Leah Fulton Eng. She is the founder and CEO of the Sober Mom Collective. She is a certified holistic coach with a specialization in recovery, a postpartum doula, a registered nurse, and her personal recovery journey began in 2021 with sustained sobriety since February 2nd, 2022. Love that. She is in recovery from alcohol use, cannabis use, depression, and anxiety. Leah is deeply passionate about supporting mothers in recovery, having experienced firsthand the transformative power of community among women navigating both sobriety and motherhood. Leah's work centers on fostering inclusive, supportive spaces where mothers can heal, connect, and thrive. She resides in Chicago with her husband and 2 children. Welcome, Leah!
Hey, thank you so much for having me today.
Yes, I'm so excited to bring you on. I know the Sober Mom Collective is a fairly new group, and it's been really exciting watching all of this unfold. And I personally joined because y'all are my people.
Yeah, exactly. And that's what we're all about, like just finding your people, finding your niche, especially in ongoing sobriety and recovery, whether you're a mom who's sober curious or sober or been in recovery for a long time, whatever it is. Like we just want to be a space for moms to come together and find connection. Um,
Yeah.
because in my experience, motherhood can be so deeply isolating, especially if you have a challenge like substance use, substance misuse, and finding other women and mothers to connect with is, for me, it's the key to getting sober and getting into recovery.
Yeah. And you had said, for you, this was the key. And so I wanted you to kind of take me back to how you entered into a space like this yourself and how this was transformative for you and kind of what inspired you to enter into the sober journey and all the things. Tell us all the things.
All the things, my story in a nutshell, let's see. So, like many mothers, the pandemic was absolutely crushing. I was living in Brooklyn with my family at the time, and since I already struggle with depression and anxiety, being in quarantine, in isolation for way longer than anyone originally thought we were gonna do. We lived not far away from a medical facility, so the number of sirens and ambulances that was going past our windows at all hours of the day and night, it was just so overwhelming, and the only tool that I had at that time was alcohol to cope with that absolutely overwhelming feeling of being out of control of what our current what our experience was through the pandemic, and it was just so hard. And not to say that I didn't already have a problematic relationship with alcohol. It was normal. It was part of how you mom. Like, you get to the end of your day, you get your couple glasses of wine. That's how we relax. Like, that is always how I had been taught or socialized or whatever. It was like that was your mommy medicine, if you will. And this is how we deal with this. Um, and then coming into the beginning of 2021, my drinking had just gotten out of control. Like, I was blowing past all guardrails and boundaries that I had set up for myself when it came to how much I would drink, when I would drink, all of that stuff. And it was just getting so bad that it became really clear to me at the beginning of 2021 that something needed to change. Like, I couldn't keep functioning the way I was attempting to function, which was not well. um, and I just started Googling support communities. I had already had a preconceived notion about what AA was, and I had my own issues with dogma and religion. And at that time, I had no idea what AA was about, but I just felt like that's not for me. Like, I had already decided it wasn't for me for whatever reason. Knowing what I know now about all the different recovery spaces, I probably would have tried it, but that's a different story. But I was just really looking for a space where I could feel seen. And I was very lucky to come upon a private community for moms where you could join meetings and really get that support I was looking for. Not to say that I didn't have my repeated day ones in 2021, because I for sure did. But just starting to show up to those meetings and listen to other moms describe such similar experiences in their struggles with mothering and parenting and coping, and how we can do that differently and without substances and without alcohol. Um, and it was a really eye-opening experience to really start to understand and come out of the denial of just how truly addicted I was, and how much I had been relying on substances, specifically alcohol, to literally function and do anything with my family. Um, and at one point in 2021, I had gotten, I think, about 90 or 100 days together, and it turned into a nice spring day. And we were all allowed to go back out into the world a little bit, and we could go sit outside. And what do you do at brunch on a nice day in May? You have a glass of wine. And it was like, "Oh, well, I'm fine now, I'm okay now. I just needed that pause. I can moderate now." And, of course, spoiler alert, when you're really addicted to a substance like I was, moderation is just not an option. And it took me the rest of that year and into 2022 to really get that through my head. And so at the beginning of 2022, I had a couple of big wake ups. I mean, talk about blowing past all the guardrails and boundaries I had put up for myself around drinking. The things that I was putting myself and my family in danger. I was putting my health in danger. It was just bad. And I was like, okay, I have to recommit to community, go to these meetings, really start raising my hand and sharing because that's what they tell me to do when I show up in that space. But I didn't want to do it because I didn't want to see myself. Um, or if you don't do that, and if you go back to drinking again, you're going to have to tell your husband and you're going to have to go to rehab. Like those are your options right now. You either give this one last go on your own or you go get inpatient help. So it was Groundhog Day. And I was like, okay, this is appropriate. I can either relive this same hell over and over again, or I can raise my hand in this meeting and say, I'm struggling and this is day one. And please, please let this be my last day one. And by the grace of the universe, another mom was on that meeting, heard me share, and she reached out to me and said, hey, been there. Here's my number. Like, you want to do this? Call me. And just another mom really putting her hand out like that and saying, you are worth picking up the phone. And it took me a while to understand that I was worth making that phone call. But she, every day, she would answer the phone at that magical time. For me, it was about 4 p.m. when that voice, addictive voice in my brain was just like, what's the harm? You can do it. Doesn't matter. You know you want this. And so instead of walking into one of the wine and liquor stores that are on literally every block in Brooklyn, I did a lot of street crossing during that time. I'd be walking down the street, I'd be on the phone with this wonderful mom, with her talking me through this craving, and I'd be crossing streets so I wouldn't walk in front of the wine and liquor stores. And just that connection, that little connection, well, it was huge to me, but it sounds so simple, like just making a phone call, um, was able to get me through the rest of my evening and hitting the pillow sober. And I started really showing up to the meetings. I started really raising my hand. And when I allowed myself to become visible in community, because I think that's one part that it can take a while to understand. It's like you can be showing up, but until you start allowing yourself to be seen, which can be a big hurdle to cross. And I don't want to play that down at all. It can be a huge hurdle. Once you allow yourself to be seen and allow people to know you, then you start creating more and more connections. And there's that adage of the opposite of addiction isn't sobriety. The opposite of addiction is connection. And I personally really found that to be true. And the women who were and mothers who were members in that group really helped me to save my own life, and really helped me to turn my experience around and really helped me to start digging into the things underneath the capital T things to really figure out where it was coming from and then how I worked through that. And it's been the privilege of my life to have found sobriety and recovery and to be in connection and community with these other women who are so strong. Recovering while parenting is not an easy thing to do. And anyone who comes into it, it's just, I always say, other sober women, other sober moms, anyone, like they just glow. You meet them in real life and it's just like, oh wow, You just have this magic within you. And we spent our so many years killing it and dampening it and numbing it out with alcohol. And now that we're out of it, it's just this beautiful, magical thing to witness.
Yeah, wow, I love that. I can just tell by talking to you, how incredibly important that was, that someone else reached out to you, that someone was willing to talk with you so that you didn't feel alone, to normalize all the struggle you were going through as a mom and struggling with alcohol. And that's so much of why I love the recovery community, is because we literally are saving each other's life in ways we don't even realize. And I I remember, when the pandemic hit, joining a sober mom group online, and then I quickly started hosting meetings for them because I already had some sober time, and I do remember you walking and sharing, and, and I remember you saying, like, "I'm in New York," and walking, sharing, and, like, street walking, and I just came from New York, and I was, like, trying not to walk into traffic, so now I have, like, another level of respect for you. But, yeah, and I felt the same way. Even though I had some sober time coming into that group, it was one of the first times I had been part of an all women's mom group that focused on that, and I'm a stepmom, and so I just thought, "Wow, what an opportunity to become integrated and to hear other women's stories." And so, yeah, it's been life-changing for me as well. But you said something really interesting that I come across with coaching clients, and I have to circle back to this because it's killing me. When you said that you gave yourself, like, one last time to show up and to do this one more day one, to get sober this time by coming into a community and raising your hand, and you had said, like, in your mind, you told yourself, "If I can't do it this time, like, my boundary is I'm gonna check myself in somewhere," and then you said, "I'm gonna tell my husband."
Mhm.
Can
Yeah.
you can you tell me a little bit more about that?
Yeah. I think the root of my personal addiction and how it started was in the rush you get from telling a lie. And abusing alcohol became a really huge lie that I could keep. So part of the high that I would get from drinking would also be how well I could hide it, or how well I thought I could hide it. When
Yes.
in reality, he knew. He was
Yeah.
worried. He probably I have no idea. I'm actually should probably ask him at some point, but again, I'm scared to ask him. Um, I'm not sure if he knew just how much I was drinking a day, but he knew that by the time he got home, once he was able to start leaving the house again and going back to work in an office, he knew I was already drunk. Like, yeah, I just don't know why I thought I could hide being like a bottle of wine deep, and he would show up and I'd be like, "I'm obviously sober right now." And so a big part of that moment of surrender for me at the beginning of 2022 and putting that up was being like, "You have to stop lying to yourself, number 1, because that's what we're doing. And then you have to stop lying to your partner." And I had engaged in some really toxic behavior with him, like the lying and the gaslighting and all that stuff with him. I actually heard another member in the group share, and she called it like making her partner co-sign her bullshit. And I was
Yes.
just like, I have been making my husband co-sign my bullshit probably the entire time that we've been together, which by that point, oh God, that would have been, we've been together over a decade. And so it's just like, at that point, I have to really surrender to the fact that I cannot do this alone. That was the first point of surrender for me. It was either I get into community and I say, I can't do this alone. Or I tell my husband if that doesn't work and say, I can't do this alone. You have to check me in somewhere. And I had the tab open on my web browser. I had it pinned. I had the place to call. Like, you need to go. This is the place you're going to go. So every day when I would log into those meetings from that same web browser, there would be like, you know, log into the meeting in one tab and here's your rehab of choice, I guess, and then right the next tab over. And it was staring that in the face every single day and every single day surrendering to the fact that there was no way I could do getting sober first by myself. Because my whole life I had been taught you do this by yourself. You do life by yourself. You pull yourself up by your own bootstraps. You handle all the things, you juggle all the things. You are the perfect wife and mother. That is our expectation for you. And this is what you have to live up to. Um, and so surrendering to the fact that this is not something I can do alone was the first big moment where it was just like, I have to start telling the truth, not only first to myself, then to the other women in my community, because it was easier to tell people on the internet I've never met in real life about my real struggle than tell the person that I live with that this is what was going on. Um, and it took me a long time to really be truly honest with him about how much I was struggling. I think I was about 4-ish months in to sobriety when I finally told him how hard it was for me to watch him open a bottle of wine and put it on the dinner table, even if I wasn't intending on drinking any. And from that day forward, he has respected that boundary. And that was really huge. He hardly drinks now himself, but he's a take it or leave it kind of guy. Like, those people really exist. It feels like, what? Um, but he's been, ever since I started communicating my needs and being honest with him about my experience and my journey, he has been nothing but supportive. And I will be every day grateful for that. Because not everybody has that same experience. I've come across so many women and mothers whose partner continues to drink and won't respect whatever boundaries that they need to maintain their sobriety. So working through all those things together in community has been really, really important, because the mom who picked up the phone every day, she was the first one to say, you got to tell him, like, this is how we do this. Like, I needed these other women in community to be like, you show up and raise your hand and tell your truth. You tell the people who are the most important in your life what that same truth is. And this is how we start not only recovering from alcohol, but recovering from the high of the lie, and to live in our truth and live in our integrity and authenticity. For me, which is what my recovery's been largely centered around.
Yeah, I love that. And you had mentioned that it was easier to tell a stranger on the internet, and I totally resonate with that. Telling our own family members, and, for me, telling my husband was really hard. Telling him the real nitty-gritty of it. Like, he knew. And not only telling him about my drinking, but then to go on and tell him about my disordered eating. Like, by the way,
Mhm.
did you know I'm binging and purging? Did you know that I'm purposely skipping meals? Because, that was like another level of hiding for me.
Yeah.
So you said so many great things there. Now my brain is going all over the place, but
Well, and I have the same thing with depression and anxiety. Like, I've only recently just been able to get honest with him about what my actual experience with depression is. Like, instead of lying and being like, oh, I'm sick and have a headache, I can be like, I'm in a depressive slump and this is what I need to get through this. And it's like it can apply to anything that we need to recover from.
absolutely. And I always tell clients, like, recovery comes in layers.
Yes.
You don't need to be expected to heal from all the things in the beginning. I mean, great if you're going to quit smoking, run a marathon, go
Yes.
gluten free, dairy free, fat free, sugar free, alcohol free, you know, all the things and just go balls to the walls. Awesome. Good for you. Go for it. I don't recommend it because it
Yeah.
sets you up for failure. And we're going to tackle one thing at a time. I tell my clients, you have one fucking job, and that is to not
Yes.
drink. Um,
Yes.
but yes, it was 2.5 years of sobriety before I was honest with my husband about my disordered eating. Because again, that layer was like, I'm not willing to
Mhm.
go there. Like, I'll get sober and tell the world I'm a drunk. I will not tell people that I binge and purge 8,000 Little Debbie cupcakes. Oh no, that
Yep.
is another level of humiliation. And
Yep.
it took me some time. And so I have mad respect for the layers that we unpack, that we peel, that we uncover, and
Yep.
that's the journey.
Totally.
That's why we call it a journey, you know?
Exactly.
And so but it was easier for me to come to a group of women in sober mom spaces and talk about that stuff than it was for me to sit down with my husband. One, because he's a man, and two, because I had lied to him for so long.
So long. Yeah.
So long. And I lied to myself and I created this big facade and, yeah, and I remember in the previous sober mom group we were all a part of coming out and talking about it for the first time and so many women being like, "Oh, me too. I also struggle with disordered eating and I
Yep.
also struggled with body image." And it it leads me to kind of move the discussion around the benefits of a group.
Yeah.
Because you had mentioned something like somebody else said this and that, and it sort of gave you the permission. And the the ways that we move forward in group settings, there's all kinds of science and psychology around how we develop, pro-social behaviors and the learning curve is reduced in groups. And oftentimes we hear from other people's shares what we needed without even raising our hand. And so, I mean, I could go on forever. We learn coping strategies, we learn behaviors, we normalize our stories, you know. And so when it comes to the old sober group that we were all a part of, not all, a lot of us were a part of. It was one of the first
Yes.
for
Mhm.
just women, just for moms. Those days, kind of ended, the doors of that group closed, and another door opened, and you saw this as an opportunity, or maybe not even an opportunity as much as it was a necessity
Yeah.
to start something, and I really wanna talk about what was going through your mind and how you formulated the Sober Mom Collective.
Well, first and foremost, let me start by saying the Sober Mom Collective is not something I do alone or by myself. The Sober Mom Collective, we are truly run as a collective. I might have had the time and space in my life at that moment to set up the back end of the nuts and bolts of the community and just give it a platform. But the community is run collectively by a group of six of us who make all of the decisions and navigation, establishing culture and what we want the group to look like and all of that. So it is not something I did by myself. The six of us had been in conversation for a while before the Sober Mom Collective started, mostly because it seemed like it was gonna be a necessity and we were all gonna need a place to go. And so we had just started talking about what do we want this to look like? How do we want to do this? And basically at the root of it was mothers need a space that's just for moms because motherhood and sobriety and recovery is its own unique experience. And there are so many amazing groups out there that provide access, inclusivity to people from all walks of life, and they're amazing. But I personally myself know, and these other women who are also part of running the community, um, we all found our home in a recovery space that was just for women that identify as mothers. And because it was such a huge piece of our identities, of our daily experience, and to have a place to come in where we can talk about all the hard stuff, not with ourselves and all the own stuff we're going through, but what does it look like to parent and to mother and to do all of that stuff in sobriety and recovery. And that was essential. We knew we needed a space where we could hold space for women who are single mothers, because they're within our community. They're within the Sober Mom Collective. There's such a tight knit group of women who are single mothers who really rely on each other, and they need a space in which to do that. Um, and Another group that we have set up right now is moms for neurodiverse children. And what is that experience like? And you can get this umbrella of motherhood, and there's all these little facets of it that their own experiences are unique. And having a space that is private and secure and very brave for those women to show up to and to tell their truths is, in my opinion, essential. Because I just know in my experience, I've showed up to other groups and spaces, and they've all had their own virtue, but it didn't feel like my recovery home. And I feel like everyone needs to be able to have the opportunity to find a home for themselves in recovery and to be able to stay connected to that community that resonates with them the most, whether it's our space or somebody else's space. But the space is needed, and there's a lot of options out there, but we really felt like there was going to be a void, and we were all up to trying to fill it as best we can.
Yeah, I love that you mentioned that it's a collective and that it's a group of women that came together. We can't do this alone. I mean, even starting a business is so hard to do alone. When I sign new coaching clients, I send them immediately a PDF that says, I would like for you to attend 90 meetings in 90 days, and here's some communities to go to. And so
Yeah,
that is part of the reason I wanted to have you on is to list these resources out. Here's a link. This is where I want you to go. Because yes, as a coach, we're going to talk about all the things, but I alone cannot save your life. This is a community thing. I still require my clients to go to meetings. I mean, we have to have other people to bounce this stuff off of and to share.
mhm,
And then I'll be working with someone for a while and they say, "Well, I'm going to the meeting. I'm going to meetings. I'm showing up." I'm like, "Are you sharing? Are you raising your hand? Are you using your voice and letting yourself be heard? Letting other people wrap their arms around you and normalize the shit you're going through." You
totally.
know, because it's all of us in this together. And, I think and all ships rise. I mean, it's not a competition of which group or who started what, or I don't
Totally.
even care about having other coaches on the podcast or talk. I mean, all ships rise. It's find what resonates for you. Find your home. Find your people that you connect with.
Yeah, that's really essential. And what I really love that you just said was like are you letting yourself be held by others? And that's one huge thing I learned in community with other women that I identified with and could feel comfortable with. Hence, like needing that space that has your people. When you start to feel like, oh, my experience resonates with her experience, and I understand what she's saying there, you know, it can be easier to let yourself do that, because one of the first things I had to learn coming into a community was to actually how to do that and how to be in community, especially with other women, and how to have healthy friendship and healthy connection with other women. I think in a lot of the time, women have been historically pitted against each other. I mean,
Yes.
as coming from a nursing background, like we always would joke around how nurses eat their young,
Yeah.
and it's a largely female profession.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of how do we start breaking down those barriers we built with ourselves with other women? And that was the first thing I had to learn coming in to well, first I had to learn how to stop drinking alcohol. But once we got that taken care of, it was like, how do I actually have a conversation? How do we go back and forth? How do I be a friend? How do I be a confidant? And how can I show up for the other women in this space? And all of those women taught me how to do that. And you can't learn that anywhere else but in community. And that's how we make that happen. And it's just everything. And we lift all each other up. That's the whole point. Like everyone rises together. How can we lift each other up?
Yeah, I love that. And that you talked about, the first thing you learned in community was like how to be in community. Because there's a skill there and there's a skill set to how to have empathy for others and how to hold space for others and have compassion and listen and, be friends with other women and let other women in. We are so hyper independent and it might be a generational thing. We were taught to break the glass ceiling as women and go feminism, and I'm all about that, but there's a bit of hyper independence there, and
Yes.
be a mom, do all the things, work at the job, be perfect, do it all by yourself, don't ask for help, I'm calling bullshit on that because there is no way I would have gotten to where I am at, over 7 years of this if it weren't for other women coming into my life saying, "I got you.
Yeah.
I've been where you are."
Holding out the hand. I say that all the time. It's just like I'm holding out my hand to you, newcomer in this space, because other women held out their hands to me because we can't always see the way, especially when we're in those dark places of addiction or depression or whatever it is. We can't always see the way. And how do you get out? By grabbing onto somebody else who does and knows how to get out. And you might be able to dig your own hole, but you can't climb out of it alone, right? So it's just like, who's going to give me a hand up? And it's just such a huge service when anyone, regardless of their experience or length of sobriety or whatever, it is such a service when they show up in community and raise their hand and tell the truth about where they're at, even if it's just their name and that they're here. It is such a service and it's such bravery and vulnerability to come in. And that's how we learn all that stuff, how we learn accountability, how we learn. I could go on and on about how essential all these different pieces of the human experience are, but especially in community with other moms, um, it's it's life changing.
Yeah, being in these groups has changed my life as well, and even as someone with some sober time, I still show up to these group meetings because it doesn't mean I know it all, like, I'm not the Bodhisattva, I'm not God, I
Yeah.
still learn from others, I still have times when I need other moms and women to wrap their arms around me and say, "Wherever you're at in your journey, we're gonna be there for you." Just this morning, I was on a meeting, we're talking about creative expression and imposter syndrome. And the interesting thing is that in these meetings, we end up talking about all the damn things,
All
right?
the
We
damn
don't
things.
just sit around and talk about, well, I can't drink today, you know?
Yeah. Yeah.
So I wanted to talk a little bit about like what goes on inside these meetings and inside these
Oh,
containers.
wow, my goodness. Magic happens in these communities. I mean, just through the flow of a conversation in a meeting, even if people are sharing on whatever it is they need to bring and share on, I mean, you know, from even the littlest things of just like, oh, I love that romantasy book too. Let's connect over our obsession with dragons in a fantasy
Yeah.
world to I have a deep mother wound that I'm trying to heal. It's everything and it's all magical. It's all the pieces of the human experience that can be brought forward in these meetings. And we laugh and we cry and we hold each other up. And some meetings we come in and we're all bitching about the people we live with, and that's fine and awesome. And we need to like release that pressure because that's what needs to happen. And sometimes we all come in and we need to share about a really difficult relationship that we have with a family member, and we have to learn how to put up boundaries so we can maintain our sobriety and recovery. And not only our physical sobriety, our abstinence piece of our sobriety, but our emotional sobriety. And that is a big piece of coming together in community, because in those early days of anyone's physical sobriety, their abstinence, just getting to the pillow sober, like you said, like that's number one. You have one job, and that is to get to your pillow sober. And you come into communities be like, oh, today really hard. I've had a really hard craving, and now I got to get through that. And just by speaking that out loud, either in a meeting in a community or to another sober person one on one, it takes the power away from that craving. And then once you get through that initial phase of just figuring out physical sobriety and abstinence, you start to get into the emotional sobriety piece. And then that's when you really need to be held by community, in my opinion, because now all of the feelings are starting to wake up again and the thoughts are starting to wake up again that a lot of us have tried to numb for however long with whatever our substance of choice was. And now it's like, whoa, what do we do with this? And the analogy that you used was like all the different layers start peeling back. I personally have a closet packed full of crap. And, when I got through that piece and started coming to the point of like, oh, now I can feel all the things again, I was able to unlock that door, see all the crap that was shoved inside there. And then it was really overwhelming. And in community, I learned that I don't have to take all that crap out at once and sort through it and figure out what to do with it. I don't have to deal with it all at once. When I'm healed enough, I can gently take pieces out one at a time, start looking at that in whatever way it makes sense, whether that is, in community, sharing in meetings, connecting with other women. If that also means I need to see somebody of a higher level, like, do I need to speak with a therapist about this? Do I need to talk, whoever that is? But a big thing that I learned is that a lot of time I didn't know when I needed something more. And then I would show up and share in a meeting, and someone would be like, I had the same experience and I was working with my therapist. I was like, oh, wow, you can actually tell the therapist the truth too, can't you? So, it's just starting to unpack that closet full of shit. And that's what happens in these meetings. We're all just unpacking our stuff from the littlest pieces that might seem trivial to the big giant crap that feels impossible to tackle. But when you feel held in community and feel comfortable, I mean, and sometimes you'll never feel comfortable. Sometimes it's always going to feel a little uncomfortable being vulnerable, because it should be, I mean, it's not always going to be rainbows and sunshine,
Yeah.
butterflies. It's showing up and telling your truth every day is fucking hard. And when you feel like you're in a community where people get you and get your experience, it gets easier to do that. And then you can start tackling all of your big stuff, especially when it comes to the emotional sobriety piece of what recovery looks like.
Yeah. I think it's important to, put it out there that in these groups, we're not just sitting around passing out mocktail recipes and braiding each other's hair. I mean, what the fuck? We're talking about some deep stuff.
Yes.
You know?
No, it is not just that.
In fact, tonight's meeting, I just saw on the
Oh yeah. Very
is
excited.
on sex and intimacy,
Yes.
which is, gosh, another topic. Like we talked about menopause last week, and very cool things happening inside this group. So yeah, to talk about, forming, storming, norming, and building this. And leave it to fucking moms. Like we needed a group, right? One door closed, another group closed. And there was like a week where all my clients were coming to me saying, "We don't have any meetings to go to. The mom group closed. Now what do we do?" And, before I could even fumble with my computer, a whole nother group popped up. And I'm like, leave it to fucking moms. These moms are fucking behind the scenes, kicking ass, building this, done. Here you go. I joined, easy as pie. I'm like, only moms could do this. Only moms could be like, no, no, no. You don't put us in a corner. Like, we'll fucking figure it out. And you
And we
guys
will.
did. And it was
Yeah.
I loved it. I was like, "Yes!" I was just, like, screaming from the cheap seats.
Oh, not even. It's amazing that you're able to join us and you've had such a great experience. It's been really incredible and fulfilling to see these women show up and keep showing up every day because it's just such a privilege to be witness to somebody else's experience. Um, and I'll hang on to that every single day, no matter what happens. But we just always want there to be a space for our moms to be seen and to feel seen because so many times, especially when we're in addiction, we're just so alone and so isolated. And we're the opposite of that. You're not alone, no matter what your personal life experience is. You share your story, you're gonna have some other woman in the room who raises her hand and says, "Me too." Um, and that's what it's all about. And it's really been a magical experience to be in community with you and these other moms and other women.
Awesome. Thank you so much for coming on. Where can people find the Sober Mom Collective if they are interested in joining or asking questions, hearing more about it?
Yeah, you can sign up for our newsletter at sobermomcollective.com. Um, you can find us on Instagram at Sober Mom Collective, also on Facebook at the same handle. There are links at that website where you can access the private community, which is hosted on Mighty Networks. So that'll send you right over there. And we would just love to have you. What I will say about our community is that while it is a subscription-based membership, the goal is to keep that cost of subscription as low as possible. So right now we offer it at $18 a month and at $195 per year. And the whole goal is to make the community self-sustaining. So every single membership dollar goes right back into the running and functioning of the community. Every single woman who works for I use that loosely, for the Sober Mom Collective is a volunteer. So all of our meeting leaders, myself, we are all volunteering our time. And so every single community needs to be sustaining in some kind of way. Um, and so I just want to be clear about that's where everyone's subscription dollars go. If you would like to check us out, um, we would be so happy to have other moms come into the space and share their truth and experience.
Thank you so much, Leah, for coming on. I hope that you guys check out the Sober Mom Collective. I love the group, and you can certainly find me in there hanging out. So I really appreciate you spending some time with me unpacking all this.
Thank you, Kate.
Thanks
It was such
again.
a joy.
All right, that's a wrap, folks. Thanks for tuning in to Rewired Sober. You can find me on my Instagram at Rewired Sober, where there are links to catch up with me and all the things I'm working on in my coaching business, or the link tree to my business directly will be in the show notes. I so appreciate you joining me on this journey, and I welcome any feedback or any topics you want to hear about, things that you're struggling with or interested in. I love you all so very much, and I'm just so enjoying doing this with you.